Hi, and welcome back. So the next part of what we're really looking to focus on here is now this introduction to sales and business development. And why is that important? How can it be helpful to our business, and how can it allow us to take our business idea now to the next stage? In the previous section, we were really focusing on trying to nail down what that problem was that we're trying to solve for and the solution that we're trying to put towards that, driven through all the customer feedback that we've got, driven through understanding the problem, driven through understanding, therefore, then the solution off the back of that and what was actually solving the problem for people, or indeed for our ideal customer. And then through the use of an MVP, a prototype, we were able to collect that feedback and build on and move forward. We saw also the difference, therefore, between what we look at and what we term as startup strategy through to what we compare to something like corporate strategy, or strategies you might think of it in the larger business world and in the larger business context, as it were. So why is sales and business development so important when you're trying to take your business idea from 0 to 1? And there are a couple of reasons for this, some more practical than others. So if we first look at one of the most practical reasons why we need to be good at selling, is because unless we're bringing cash into the business, there's only a certain number of cycles that the business can go through before it then crashes off, burns, dies, goes away, and that's the end of our business idea. So from a practical perspective, we need to bring it in. But secondly, if we're able to sell something, if someone's willing to give us money, if someone's willing to pay for the solution, it's therefore delivering value to those people. So that's a first sort of high-level view into why we're really looking at driving our sales process. It means that we're delivering value to our customer. Now, in sales and business development, the reason that I've called it both sales and business development is because we're not just looking at how do we sell a product. What we're really looking at is how do we create ourselves as a package? How do we create the right products, the right material that allows us to go out and sell a product to a person, or a service to a person, to an actual buyer. And one of the things that I found quite difficult when I was first starting was I was always taught, or always thought, that the people who could sell the most were the ones who spoke the most. And I wasn't necessarily naturally a huge talker, but what I've actually found that some of the best salespeople actually talk very little in those conversations. And we'll go into a little bit more depth about what that actually means. But as an overview of the next couple of sessions, what we're really looking at first is sales methodologies. Can we break down, or are there certain methodologies that we can follow that are going to help us in that sales process? Now, if you're a natural born salesperson and you can sell very simply without following any structural framework whatsoever, then fantastic. But some people, and myself included here, preferred something that I could follow, a sort of framework that would allow me to get from A to B, that would allow me to think, is there a way that we can codify a process of sales and actually then bring that to the fore? The second area that we're then going to look at as we go through these videos is around what I've termed as business etiquette. And that's around building your own personal image, the way that you want to be perceived by others. So using networking in your favor, making sure that networking is seen as a positive word, because it's through our networks that we're able to build those really solid and valuable connections that actually allow us to go from not only 0 to 1, but 1 to 10, and then 10x from that. So it's really around how can we build that network around us? How can we give to our network? And then hopefully that network will then give back to us. We even look at things as simple, and perhaps sounds fairly boring, but as simple as email writing. How do we write a good email? And that's going to be massively, massively important, not only when it comes to those first outreach emails, but those sales emails and pushing people and pushing those clients towards a goal. That's what you're trying to funnel our customers down into. Those who are then actually going to become paying customers, but then also is going to be used later in our digital marketing section, where we're really focusing on how do we drive our email campaigns, and being able to write in a very clear, sophisticated way that allows us to get a lot of information over in very few words is very, very key to be able to deliver our service or our product or service in a really strong and great manner, allowing us to hopefully be more successful in getting our idea from 0 to 1. And then finally, we're then going to be looking at presentation skills. So this is an introduction to PowerPoint and how we can use PowerPoint to give us and allow us to deliver better presentations. But actually then the way that we present those presentations as such, we're going to use something called the pyramid principle. And that is an idea that was coined by a very successful lady called Barbara Minto. And there's a brilliant book, and I really recommend you read it. But we'll dive into a little bit more around what that means a little bit later in some of the videos. But this particular video is really focusing on sales methodologies. How can we get from zero, from essentially perhaps a cold email, a cold call, all the way through to a sale? And this was something that I was struggling to get my head around as to how we can actually go about doing this. What were the particular techniques that were out there? Now, before we actually get into this, what I want to talk around is the importance of sales. Now, if you're the founder of a business, if you are the only person working in that business, you can't turn around and say, I'm not a salesperson, I don't do sales. Because the salesperson in that business is you. If you're founding that business and you're the CEO, etc. of this, you're not the CTO, or you're doing it alone, you are at that time, you don't have a sales closer, you are the salesperson. So whether you like sales or don't like sales, taking your business idea from 0 to 1 requires you to be a salesperson. Now, one thing that I'd definitely recommend you get out of your head, and something that I had in my head for quite a while, was that a salesperson only sells a product or service, but they don't. You're always selling at all parts in our life, whether we're a salesperson by title in our job or not, we're always selling. So let's say, for example, you go to a job interview, you're selling your expertise, your knowledge, your know-how to the employer. You're wanting them to buy you as a person, your knowledge, your expertise, and in exchange for that, give you a salary for that, right? The second thing that you might be doing is you work on a partnerships team, or you're looking to get a new partner. Now, you're trying to sell the expertise of your firm, your idea, so that you'll get a valuable, a mutually beneficial partnership with that person, or indeed with that company. If we're looking to hire employees within an organization, then you're trying to sell the business. You're trying to sell the idea, to get them to buy into it and actually want to join your organization. So we're always selling in life, and we're always looking to try and convince somebody else of the value that we might have to offer, or indeed the value of what we're trying to sell. And so selling in some capacity, where we're just focusing on selling a product, is only one element of the world of sales. So we are always selling, and I'd really recommend that you understand that, and that you drill a little bit deeper into that, because understanding how to sell and the importance of selling, what it actually means, is massively important. And so if we now turn our attention to really focusing on trying to sell a product or service, now what you might term as the real raw form of sales in this capacity, and how we all think generally around what a salesperson will do, what they think and how they work. This is where I came across a couple of techniques that we can use to implement in our business that allow us to sell a product or service. One of them is called value selling, and the other one is called challenger sales. And we'll take each of them in turn. And hopefully one of them will apply to your business in the way that your business idea works. So if we first take value selling, one of the things that I always thought, and mentioned it at the beginning of this video, was that those who could talk a lot were brilliant at sales. And in fact, value selling flips this on its head. And in fact, some of the best salespeople in the world are actually only talking for about 20 to 30% of a sales call. And so what they're doing instead is they're really trying to understand the customer's problem, understand the problem that they're looking to solve for that particular customer in mind. Now let's think back to design thinking, lean startup, and these sorts of ideas, again, around customer feedback coming back out, and the importance of actually listening to our customer. Because we could go to our customer with your business idea, and that business idea might have 10 different features. And what you might do is sit there and go through every single feature that you have. Oh, we've got this, we've got that, it's this color, it works this quickly, it'll allow you to do X, it'll allow you to do Y. When actually that customer might only be interested in one feature. And the way that you work that out is by asking them questions around what problem they're trying to solve. So you're trying to understand, again, it all comes back to things that we've already covered, already done in some sort of capacity here, and actually bringing it back to its bare bones and trying to understand what the problem is that we're trying to solve for that particular customer. And this is where the skill of the salesperson comes in, because it's your job now to pick up on those small golden nuggets of information where you can say, in fact, we've got a brilliant feature that solves just that problem. And that's how you start to build your trust with your customer, because saying this person really understands what I'm going through. They understand the difficulties, they understand the challenges that I face. So value selling is really around trying to understand the problem that your customer has. Now, one of the best things you can do in value selling is then trying to quantify the problem that that customer has. Now, what do I mean by that? So if a customer, you're solving a particular problem for a customer, and that problem at the moment is costing that customer, let's say, £10 a week, right? So what we're trying to say is, if you don't solve this problem that's costing you £10 a week, then over the course of a year, that's going to be £520 that you're going to spend trying to solve this problem. Now, I have a feature that allows you to solve that problem for £200. And so what you're doing is you're quantifying in the mind of that customer the value that you're delivering. So you're saying that this is going to cost the customer anyway, if they don't do anything, £520. But with your £200 service or product, you're able to solve that issue for them. You're saving them £520 and asking for £200 in return. Now, to me, that sounds like a pretty good offer that you're using. So value selling is actually a very, very interesting technique that you can use. It's not easy because you're trying to drill down into a problem. You're then trying to quantify that problem and at the same time find the right feature that's good that you can then use to offer to that client that will solve the issue. So it's not an easy technique to use, but it's certainly one that's worthwhile implementing into your business. So if we're looking at value selling and we're saying, okay, how can we actually implement that into our business? Let's say that you're on a call. So let's look at this discovery call process. Now, you might not be able to, if you get a client on a call or a particular customer who you think might be interested, or you've managed to create a connection, you're about to have a call with this customer, you might not be able to sell on that particular call. And that's not your fault, and it's not a bad outcome. But what we can use is something called a discovery call process. So the first thing that we want to do during that call is start to understand the customer's issues. What are they facing? What are the challenges that they're going through? What are their worries? What are their fears? And what does good look like to them? What would it be like if they were able to solve this problem? And so what you're trying to do is you're really listening out to what that problem is. And the way that you can then build trust with them, with that particular prospect client on the phone, is to repeat that problem back to them in your own words. So say, okay, so if I've understood correctly, you have difficulties here, here, and here, or your particular problems or issues or fears lie across A, B, and C. And if you can distill that really distinctly down into one sentence, what their problem is that they've gone on to describe, then they will really, really appreciate that and buy into it, because they'll have an aha moment where they'll say, this person really understands my problem. The next thing that we want to do, which is what I've already alluded to, is can we quantify this problem? Do we know how much it's going to cost them if they don't solve this issue? Or do we know how much value they can deliver if they're able to solve for this particular problem? Can we quantify it? Once we've quantified it, we also want to establish some timelines to solve this one. So when does this problem need to be solved by? If it's a regulatory thing, for example, there might be a certain regulation that's coming in at a certain period of time where they need to find a solution before the end of that period. What happens if they don't solve it in that time? So we know that in our previous example, there was a cost of £10 per week. So over the course of that year, that was £520. We're starting to quantify that and put a timescale on that. And then finally, one of the things that you want to do is at the end of a call, if somebody says, that's brilliant, thank you, can you just send me an email and we'll get back to you? Don't leave the call there, okay? Do not leave the call there. As much as you can, whilst you're on the phone, you've got that person's attention. And the biggest thing, the largest resource that we have in life is time. And so once you've got somebody's time on the phone, don't waste it. And so what you're trying to do is you're trying to lock in that next call. So if they want a follow-up or if they want some more information from you, then that's absolutely fine. So Mr. Smith, absolutely fine. Totally understand that now might not be the right time for you to move forward with this. Understand that you need information 1, 2, and 3. I've just had a look at my diary. Next week on Friday at 11 a.m., I have some availability. Do you? And they might be a bit and ahhing and saying, oh, well, yeah, no, we'll have a read and then we'll get back to you. But try again if you need to. Say, look, it would be, even if it's just a touch base, or even if we've just got something in the diary which we can then move, let's try to nail this date and time in. And so what you're trying to do is lock in their time so that they can see it in their calendar. So it's coming, and you might have a reminder a couple of days before, looking forward to the call. And it's fine if you need to shift the call after. But if you can make sure that you lock it in, so you're not waiting and then following up saying, have you had a chance to look at it? Shall we put some time in? Rather, that time's already in. So what we've looked at so far is what value selling is, how we can use value selling within a discovery process call, as we've seen here. Now, what is challenger sales? How does that differ? And why have I put 2 different methodologies on here? The reason that I've put 2 methodologies on here, because it depends what you're selling. And these 2 techniques might not work for everything. Quite often they're very useful for a B2B service, B2B meaning business to business. So you're selling to businesses. They can also be helpful if you're selling to customers, like directly to consumers. So that's called B2C. That can also be, they can also be used for that as well. These sorts of techniques, for example, wouldn't necessarily be used if you're not needing a personal interaction with somebody. That type of sales will basically be driven through your marketing. And that's obviously what we'll come on to next. So this part about sales is really around when we're selling to a person, to a business, directly to a consumer, where the discussion is had either face-to-face, over the phone, over video call. So challenger sales, how does it differ to value selling? So challenger sales is really focused on making sure that you're looking and you're coming across as the expert in your field. Now, as a salesperson, you may not be the expert in your field at that time, and that's fine. So use more of a value selling technique where you're understanding what the problem is, but you know your product inside out. You know the service or product inside out, meaning that you can choose whichever feature is on there and link that to the problem that you're trying to solve. On the other hand, when we're looking at something like challenger sales, if you are the expert in your field, let's say, for example, you're a PhD student, you know everything there is to be about, everything there is to know about your subject, and you have people coming to you. And so rather than them talking through their pains, their difficulties, their fears, what you're saying is, I know exactly what your pain is. I know exactly where you're finding difficulty. I know exactly what your challenge is. And actually, I can teach you how to solve that. I can teach you about my service or product and how that actually works. I can teach you as well about this particular niche in the industry. So you might still be working with people who have been in that industry for 20 years, right? But you're a particular expert in one particular area of that industry. And what you're doing is you're teaching them the solution. You're offering them unique, valuable insights that they won't have seen or thought of before. And so what they're doing is they're buying into your expertise. And so this depends whether what you're selling in terms of a service is your expertise. So let's say you're selling a coaching business, or you're trying to teach online. You want to put yourself as ideally more of a challenger sale, because you want people to be looking at you and buying into you and your particular offer because they think you're the expert. You need to come across you essentially need to come across as the expert in your field, so that they say that's the person we go to when we've got this particular problem. On the other hand, with value selling, that's more around you might not necessarily be an expert in that field, in that industry, and you're working with sort of experts there, but what you're really looking at doing is boiling it down and focusing on the problem that you're trying to solve for them. And where you are an expert is actually in the product that you're selling. So you're really, really going to understand all the features and the features that can be helpful to that particular prospect. Ideally, then turning them into a client through our discovery call process, understanding what it is that they need in order to solve their issue, and then solving it for them. So it's really, really important, therefore, that with these two sales techniques, if you want to employ them, please do. I think they're very, very helpful once you can understand them and implement them. They're easier to talk about than they are to actually implement. So I'm sure you'll see that as you start to go through, and as you start to try and implement these into your business idea, trying to get those first sales. And if anything, if you're not getting those sales, then at least the question is, what are you learning from those sales calls that you're having? So that wraps up the value selling and challenger sales methodologies that we're looking at. And I think that you've got your key takeaways here. The ones that I would definitely suggest you really keeping in mind is really try and nail down what the customer problem is. They will have one particular problem that's unique to them. Try and work that out. By the way that you work that out is through the questions that you ask. So look at some of the templates that we've given in the templates part of the course, which you can use and implement in your work and in your business. Make sure that certainly on those discovery calls, you're listening more than you're talking, because the more you're listening, you're going on that journey with the client and you're really, really understanding. The final thing that I definitely say is that when you are doing the sales part of the business, if you're the founder of the business and you haven't got a sales closer yet, you are the salesperson, right? If you've built your business, you've gone from 0 to 1, you're starting to scale, and you're saying, I don't really want to do too much of the heart of the raw sales. What I'll do is I'll hire a sales closer. That's fine. But until then, you are the salesperson, and you're going to have to get used to rejection. And what I mean by that is that you're going to get rejected by partners. You're going to get rejected by investors. You're going to get rejected by prospects and clients. You're going to get rejected by employees who don't want to join your organization as it starts to grow. But you need to be able to take that on the chin, and you need to be able to distill that and say, actually, that's fine. We'll go again. We'll go again. We'll go again, and we'll go again. And that's where you start to find the most successful salespeople, because we're all going to have failure. It's very, very difficult, almost arguably impossible, to go through this sort of journey and not have any failure whatsoever. But also, failure is a good thing, because that's where you can learn. I'm not too much of a fan of cliches, but there's quite a few that go around essentially saying around, look, you never lose, you either win or you learn. And that's absolutely true. And so you might not win everything, but hopefully from all the calls that you've had and all the work that you've done, you will start to learn something that you can then implement and start to build on. So if this has interested you and you want to learn a little bit more around sales, have a look at Judy Thomas. She talks brilliantly around the world of value selling. I find her extremely valuable to listen to, and a very interesting lady. Jordan Peterson, I think he speaks really, really well. So if you want to learn how to present, really listen to him, how he goes about it, how he talks, how he brings you on a journey, how he essentially talks in stories. And he talks a lot around sales psychology and how that works. So on that note, I will leave this video. Hopefully it's been helpful. Hopefully you've started to understand a little bit more about what we're getting at and what we're trying to achieve. And I would really recommend that now what we're trying to do, we've nailed the problem, we've nailed the solution. We're now going out to try and find those first clients, those early adopter clients who are first going to believe in not only in our business, but actually also in us as a founder of that business, to try and actually take that business now from 0 to 1, not only as a concept or into a product, but now into some sort of revenue, which we can then put back into the business as we start to grow.